Step right up, folks. You're now entering It's Circus, where parenting isn't always a show stopping act, but it's certainly entertaining. I'm your host, Elsa, here to prove that no one really knows what they're doing, and that's perfectly fine. So join me and my guests as we share stories, tips, confessions that'll have you laughing, crying, and nodding along. Let's have some real conversations, peel back the layers, and remind you that you're never alone in the madness. Let's get the show rolling. Yay, welcome, Crystal, to our podcast. I am so excited to dive in. So I'd love your mamahood stats. So how long have you been a mom for? How many kiddos? All that good stuff.
My daughter was born in July of 2023. So I've been a mom for 19 months, one baby, one little girl. Hopefully we'll have, knock on wood, one more eventually. But right now, just one for one.
I love it. Amazing. Well, one of the reasons I'm so excited to chat with you today is your kind of journey into motherhood. It is a little unique, so I would love for you to share your story with us.
Yeah, so I never wanted to be a mom. I was like very anti-kid. I like really loved my freedom and I loved my
Mhm.
career. And then the pandemic hit and I was like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I actually really like being at home with my husband. And so we decided that we wanted to build our family. And we had two really interesting things that we ran into. The first just being that we couldn't conceive unassisted.
Mhm.
There was just no way that we just didn't work. And the second being that I got in a really bad car accident when I was in 2015, the beginning of 2015, and I
Yep.
broke my spine in three places. And so that
Oh
made it
my God.
really, really scary for me to carry. And I had, basically went to multiple specialists here in UCSF, and they said, you can do it once. We wouldn't recommend you doing it more than once. And there's, you're not going to be very present for the last trimester, no, nor for the fourth trimester. It would be really difficult on you and probably the baby and your husband. So
Wow.
we recommend you exploring options. So we ended up deciding to go the surrogacy route, which was, while really difficult, was actually ended up being just like the most beautiful, amazing thing in the world once everything sort of fell into place.
Wow, that is incredible. Were you in contact with the person that was carrying your baby?
Yes. So I found the
Okay.
agency actually, we interviewed about six agencies and I ended up finding the agency through somebody that I work with. They had worked with this agency, Your Fertility Advocate had worked with a gay couple at Google where I was
Hmm.
working. And when I connected with Megan, who runs that agency, like I just like cried immediately. Like she was amazing.
Oh my God.
And she made me feel so amazing and safe. And she connected me with another Megan, another woman named Megan. And the second Megan is the one who carried Mackenzie. And Megan and I texted probably every day. We were like sisters. We still are. Honestly, we text
Wow.
probably weekly now. But yeah,
Yeah.
she's like amazing. And, she would text me like, oh, I just had this like delicious salad. And like Mackenzie like really loved the chicken, but I can tell she doesn't really like the onions and like stuff like that. Like it was like really cute. Like she would give me these like really cute updates of like, oh my gosh, like whenever the dogs bark, like Mackenzie starts kicking, like I can tell she's going to love dogs, like things like that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And amazing that you are still staying in contact with her too.
Yeah, I mean, she's just like such an angel of a human. She's had four of her own kids, and after her
Hmm.
first kid, she told her husband, she's like, I want to do three, and then I wanted my fourth to be a surrogacy, because she's like, pregnancy was so easy for me, and I want to be
Wow.
able to like give this to somebody else. And then they ended up having four, and then her fifth was like, it was like so crazy. She's like, thank you for like making. I've always wanted this dream to come true, and like you and Jake are amazing, and I'm so glad I was able to do this with you guys. So it was really just like a beautiful experience. And her husband was amazing. Her kids were amazing. Like
Ah,
it was just like, it was like unreal. Like how well it all worked out.
oh my gosh, that's amazing. Before you went this route, did you have any preconceived notions that are just total myths, or now that you've been through the process and potentially you've heard something, what are some of those things that maybe just aren't real or aren't realistic when you're working with surrogacy?
Yeah, I think that the two big things that like were the myth bustings for me is like the
Yeah.
first, I think the natural thing is like, well, what if they get attached to the baby, right?
Sure.
And it's so funny because on the flip side, when a woman is going through the process of potentially becoming a surrogate, one of the first things
Hmm.
she said is like, well, what if they decide they don't want the baby? It's like so funny on either side where it's like, well,
Yeah.
I don't want that. Like, I don't want to keep this
Right.
baby. Like, I have babies. Like, I don't want another
Right.
baby. And then on the other side, it's like, well, what
Right.
if she doesn't want to give me a baby? So it's
Yeah.
so funny because like there's some really stringent
Hmm.
psychological profiling that goes into it. Our
Okay.
agency only accepts like 10% of applicants to be surrogates.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's like it's a really specific mindset that they have to be in, but it's
Hmm.
like definitely one that's like it's almost as if like I'm giving you this amazing gift. Like I don't want to keep it for
Hmm.
myself because I would never want this thing because I already
Yeah.
have it myself, but I want to give it
Yeah.
to you. So I think that's number one. And then number two is actually a big part, and all agencies are different, but within our agency,
Hmm.
a big thing that they need to pass is a financial background check, and they can't
Hmm.
have any like outstanding debt outside of like it's like some student loans, a car payment, and a house payment,
Okay.
because they don't want money to be a contributing factor into any of the decision
Sure.
making. It's supposed to be this bonus, and a lot of them will actually either not like necessarily forego the fee, but like maybe
Hmm.
put it into like a trust fund for their kids or like a college fund or something. Like it's
Sure.
not like they don't see it as much as income. So I thought
Right.
that was like a really interesting piece of it as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that is like so fascinating. Were you able to see Megan, or do you have like a relationship with her now?
So they live up in Oregon. They're on
Hmm.
the right on the border of California and Oregon.
Hmm.
So we actually were able to drive up. We're in Northern
Hmm.
California, so we were able to drive up to when Mackenzie was born and drive her home the next day.
Hmm.
But they're not necessarily close enough for us to see. But
Hmm.
we do talk all the time. We absolutely like text all the
That's so
time,
great.
and I send her pictures, and she sends me pictures of how her kids
Hmm.
are doing and how her husband's doing.
Hmm. That's amazing. So, what were those like first few moments with her like?
It was so incredible because in the moment I was really devastated that like I wasn't the one giving birth.
Okay.
But Megan was so amazing and the room was like the whole day was really magical. It was July 21st. It was the
Hmm.
day the Barbie movie came out. There was lots of like feminine energy in the air.
Oh, I love
Like
it.
at 6 a.m., her husband
Yes.
called and was like, baby's coming.
Oh my
Only
gosh.
female doctors, only female nurses.
Uh,
My daughter's coming into the world. It was just like this really, and I just felt like for a moment, I was like, I wish this was me. And my husband was like, don't like get that out of your head. Just like be in the moment.
right.
And Megan was like, fine. She was like directing traffic. She's like, make sure you're standing over there. Like, make sure, Jared, you're getting pictures.
Oh.
And Mackenzie came out and they handed her to me. And it was just like this instant, like, oh, this is my baby. Like,
Hmm.
it was just like kind of the world stopped. And it's felt like that since then. And it was just, yeah, I like, can't describe it. Like all of the anxiety I had just like washed away the second they put her in my arms.
Oh my God. That is such a beautiful story, Crystal. That like
It
makes me
was
want to
really
cry.
wonderful. There was actually a nurse who was on duty overnight with Megan and
Hmm.
stayed, even though she was off, stayed through the delivery because she's like, we've actually
Hmm.
never had like a surrogacy delivery here. And she's like, I just think
Hmm.
this whole thing is so beautiful and the relationship between
Hmm.
you guys is so beautiful. And like, I just want to like be here to help you guys through it and be there for it. It was like, it was just amazing. Her name was Molly. It's an incredible nurse, but we were just very
Oh,
lucky.
oh my gosh. What a beautiful story and what an incredibly beautiful experience. Um, that is amazing. Is there any type of like advice or anything you would tell yourself back then? Like, be in that moment, or any like additional advice for going through that entire process?
Yeah, I think the advice I would have given myself is break it into chunks and take one step at a time because
Yeah,
it's such a long, expensive, overwhelming process. It's really easy to just get discouraged.
sure.
Um, and so I would just say like just take it one step at a time. And the other thing I would say is I was really like I held a lot of shame around surrogacy. I still do sometimes. And so I just didn't like I didn't want to go shopping because I felt like everyone was looking and like, oh, she doesn't have a belly, or like I didn't want to like wear a hospital gown because I was like, I'm not actually like giving birth and like
Hmm.
all this stuff. And I felt like I was actually very shameful of my body. And now I wish I had just like honestly just been like tits out with like skin to skin contact right away, and
Right.
like gone and done the shopping, and like who the fuck cares who's like, if you're gonna judge me, like,
Yes.
you know what I mean, like get fucked, you know. Like I
Yeah.
wish I would have just like been more less self-conscious around the whole thing.
Ugh. I mean, it's the power of shame and motherhood and the journey into motherhood. I think there's so many layers that are there. And it's interesting that that was the layer that you experienced and one that you talked about. Was there anything outside of yourself that maybe was making you feel that way, or something that was happening for you that kind of gave you this unnecessary shame?
You know, I think we live in a really interesting time for surrogacy
Yeah.
because there's sort of a twofold with it, where
Mm-hmm.
there's for civilians to go through it, it's in a lot of ways more accessible than it's ever been, which is like beautiful, because there are
Mm-hmm.
wonderful women out there like Megan who want to help, you know,
Right.
make families, and there are people like me who want families, and adoption has become a not so viable option anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying adoption's not great, it is. It's just not like where it used to be in the, you know, the 80s and before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then on the so there's that, and there's more sort of civilians going through it, and the civilian process, I say civilians, but like the civilian process for
Yeah.
surrogacy is very specific, very intense. We had to go through multiple rounds of psychological testing. She did. It's really expensive, it's really tough. Then you see a lot
Yeah.
of celebrities doing it, and there are some celebrities doing
Yes.
it for all the right reasons, for the same reasons that civilians are doing it, and then there's some celebrities that are doing it, and you know, as they're going through the process, they would never get approved. Like, you look at
I
Chloe and
see.
Tristan, like
Mm-hmm.
our even our IVF clinic
Yeah.
would not sign off on surrogacy until they had seen like that Jake and I had been married for at least 3 years. They had to see
Mm-hmm.
all of our financial records. Jake and I each had to go through separate evaluations and then an evaluation together, but by like a psychologist of their choice and their approval. And Megan
Right.
had to go through it, because they basically want to make sure that, like, if Megan's going to put herself through this, that we are a serious family unit, and
Mm-hmm.
like she can have that like fulfillment that comes with being a surrogate. Somebody like a Chloe and a Tristan would have never gotten approved, right? Where it's like, oh, we just broke up, but we're back together 2 months later, and like Chloe doesn't really want to carry, and blah blah blah, and then we
Right.
break up again.
Yep.
But like you can kind of pay to get out of that, and so I think that causes a lot of like people, that's the public examples they see, they don't see the like everyday civilian examples and like what the
Yeah.
process is. And so I think a lot of external judgment comes from that, because in the same way that like we kind of project whatever's going on in pop culture onto like just regular
Mm-hmm.
people, a lot of that was projected onto us. So there were definitely people in our orbit that were not supportive of it, or were judgmental, or, you know, just like, oh, well, it's because you don't want to do this, or like, you should just try it anyway. Like, even if the risk is there, it's not like you're going to die. And it's like, okay,
Ugh.
but like, maybe I don't want to be temporarily paralyzed. Like, you know what I mean? So
Right.
there's just like those external factors. And I do think it's helpful that more people publicly are doing it, because I think it's helping to
Yes.
destigmatize it. But when people are doing it for the wrong reasons, or like Elon Musk, like doing it to have like a 15th
Yeah.
child, like that's where it starts to kind of get a bad name, bad rap.
Oh my God. I mean, seriously. I mean, what a group to be lumped into and to kind of have to navigate. I mean, something that, I think happens in all areas of our life, but I think there's a particular soft spot is the just the judgment and criticism that happens externally as a woman becomes a mom, or a dad becomes a man becomes a dad, or a parent just becomes a parent. There is kind of like the like doors open, and all of a sudden everybody feels that they can come in with opinions like, I've done this before, I have an opinion because I'm the best parent in the world. Like, who knows? But that type of criticism that is out there is just on another level, I think, specifically when we enter this time in our lives. And, I'm curious from your point of view, were you able to find community, or were you able to connect with other people that had gone through the same thing that could help kind of hold your hand through it? Or is there a a need for some sort of support as people kind of move through this journey?
I was actually really fortunate in that there were a couple other people in my orbit going through the same process. Some of them, like
Yeah.
same-sex gay couples,
Yeah.
that, like needed a surrogate in order to have genetic kids. And then another woman who I had worked with who had a early her baby was born like 3 months early and only lived for like 20 days and then died, and they basically
Oh,
said if you get pregnant again, that's probably going to happen again. So she was going through the surrogacy process. So
mm-hmm.
I was able to find some community there, which was really great. My company had some really good forums and connected people, which I was really grateful for. But I was also surprised, and like just in general, like once Mackenzie was here, the mom group that kind of like magically appeared around me, whether it was like the group that I had joined in San Francisco or
Mm-hmm.
just people that I had known in my orbit. Like once the kid's
Mm-hmm.
here, it's kind of crazy how like women just sort of like pop out of nowhere and like, how can I help you? What have you
Yeah.
tried this? Like what's going on here? And
Yeah.
you're like, oh my gosh, you're being so nice. So I definitely think that like that community, like, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a good way to show, like, to really suss out like
Mm-hmm.
who are the people in your life that are actually like care about you and
Mm-hmm.
aren't there to judge, and like you can feel
Right.
like comfortable and vulnerable with. And I was really like pleasantly surprised with how that kind of appeared from both the surrogacy community and the just in general
Mm-hmm.
parent community.
Yeah, that is amazing. I do think that's true. I always, when I hear this, I always think about me and myself because my group of friends, I was one of the last, if not the last, to have a kiddo. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I was very unaware, very, very unaware of what anybody goes through at any journey to become a parent. Um, so, tough times, man. It's hard. Um, for you and going through all of that, and now you have your sweet little baby, were you prepared? I mean, did you read all the books? Like, how did you prep yourself for the moment that she was going to be in your arms and be yours forever?
Yeah, so I'm pretty type A, so I definitely read like a ton of
Yeah.
books. And we also some of the best money we spent was we had this woman who was this like amazing doula come over to our
Ah,
house like two
yes.
weeks before she was born and just like teach us how
Yeah.
to keep her alive. And like teach us how to change a diaper and stuff. And like that was
Yeah.
amazing. So that we definitely prepared, but I don't think anything actually really prepares you for it. Like
Okay.
when the kid is there, you're just like, oh my God, this thing is so fragile and so nonsensical and can't respond to me. And like I have to keep it alive. It's amazing that we've survived as a species. But I think I was as prepared as anybody could be. But I think the thing that prepares you the most, quite frankly, is age. Like I'm very fortunate that,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to wait until I was at a point in my career, until I was at a point
Yes.
in my marriage where I was at a point with my finances where it made a lot of sense. I think, when we look, and especially when we're sort of forcing women to carry pregnancies
Mm-hmm.
that they're not ready for,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the toughest thing because like, when I remember there was one Saturday night where like she was just inconsolable. And so she would only sleep on me. And so it was like 3 a.m. and I was laying on the floor of the nursery and she's sleeping on me. I was like, this is not how I've spent most Saturday mornings when I've been up at 3 a.m., but there's nowhere else
Mm-hmm.
I'd want to be right now. And thinking
Mm-hmm.
about myself even a decade ago, I wouldn't have felt that
Yes.
way. I would have felt really resentful. So I do think the best thing you can do to prepare is just like be in the right mindset and be in the right
Mm-hmm.
place in your life. And then everything else kind of falls into place.
Ugh, I think that's such powerful advice. It is totally true for what I'm hearing you say is like if you're the best version of yourself, you're gonna manage through this transition just fine. And I think that is just so true. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you prepared, you read all the books, you had some classes with the doula. Love that. Anything else that prepped you or anything you felt that was valuable as you started that entry into parenthood that you would recommend for anyone? Or thinking back to your old self, is there something else you wish you would have done?
I asked just a lot of people advice, and
Yeah.
I like was really good at organizing it. And you don't have to take any advice. You don't have to take anybody's advice, but just asking people and being open to it
Mm-hmm.
was amazing. Because like I had one girlfriend who recommended this moms group that puts you in a cohort with moms who first time moms who are have
Yes.
babies within 6 weeks of you, and like that was one of the best pieces of advice I got. And it was just offhanded. I was like, hey, you were a San Francisco mom. Like, what would you recommend? And she listed
Mm-hmm.
off like four things, and that was one of them. I did that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, had another friend that was like, oh, there's swim classes, like, whatever they are. So, I would just say, like, don't be afraid to ask advice. Don't feel like it's like a failure or you're saying you're not prepped. And then what I actually did was took all the best advice and best things I've had, and I made it into a Google Doc. And I've like since like just like shared that to
Yes.
everybody I know who's like having a kid, where
Yes.
I'm like, you can take this or you don't have to, but like these are the things that were really helpful. So just don't be
Love
afraid
that.
to like ask advice or take advice. Just because you're asking it doesn't mean you have to take it, right? Like you can make your own
Totally.
decisions. But there's a lot of gems out there. Like the mom community is like really sharp.
I know. I love that. Did you get any bad advice
Did I get any bad advice?
or unsolicited advice, maybe?
I got plenty of unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
I would say I don't think that there's anything that is bad advice, but there was advice that I fundamentally didn't work for me and my family
Mm-hmm.
and my baby, and that's fine. And most of that was actually around sleeping and eating. Like
Okay.
I wanted to be really strict about sleeping. We didn't co-sleep. So we never shared a room with her,
Mm-hmm.
which is like very controversial to some people, but like the
Yep.
space that my family and I needed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that like worked for us. And like for some people,
Mm-hmm.
that was like very, very shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, like we went hardcore baby led weaning. For some people, that was like
Mm-hmm.
really, really shocking. They didn't want to see the gagging, like, and I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it like worked really well.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Um, for when you had the doula around, did she also kind of give you like a heads up for like feeding and sleeping and all of that? And then how did
You
you
know,
find your kind of like anchor in the ground? Like, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's a good question. She actually, the things that she posed to us that like helped
Yeah.
anchor us was
Yeah.
it was so interesting. So the first thing she did was like, we sat down in our living room. We have two
Mm-hmm.
dogs. The dogs got up on the couch with her and she's like,
Mm-hmm.
great, why don't we practice just how you're going to bring your daughter into the house? And we're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
we're just going to carry her in. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, your dogs jumped on me when I came in the house, so do you think they're not
Mm-hmm.
going to jump on the baby? And we were like, oh, I guess we didn't think about that. And so she just like helped us actually frame parenthood within
Uh-huh.
like our lives and our space.
Yes.
Or she
Mm-hmm.
said, let's practice feeding the baby. Where do you think you're going to feed the baby? And we said, well,
Mm-hmm.
probably in the nursery. And she said, well,
Yeah.
I would think that people that love their dogs enough that they would sit on the couch next to them and sit on their laps while they're talking to a
Mm-hmm.
stranger, we'd want to eat dinner together. So like, where do you eat? And we said, well, we eat here in the kitchen. And she's like, well, why don't we practice feeding her in the kitchen? Because that's where the family eats. So she did a really good job of like contextualizing it within our
Mm-hmm.
family. And I think that helped in terms of just like setting the stage of like, there's actually no right or wrong way of doing anything. You want to do it
Mm-hmm.
in the way that's like works for you and your family and however that works. So like, us with like our dogs or whatever it is, right? I thought that
Yeah.
was super helpful.
Yeah, I think that is really helpful. Um, Sometimes I feel like there is just this overwhelming piece of advice that like comes through from all the books, all the stuff we see on social, all the family, all the friends, all the people, around us. Was there anything that you and your husband did that just solidified it, or was it anything you had to work through to find what worked for you guys? And have you changed anything, or is you kind of just stuck with it and it went with it?
I think she's always changing, so we're always
Yeah.
changing for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I think the best piece of advice I got from my mom
Mm-hmm.
was she saw me like take Mackenzie out of Jake's hands once and I tell him like
Mm-hmm.
he was doing something wrong. And she was like,
Mm-hmm.
one, never do that because he then will just stop doing things and then it'll all be on you
Mm-hmm.
as long as they're fine. And two, you have to put him first because like if you guys
Mm-hmm.
don't put each other first, you're like one-on-one, and that's not helpful. Like it's easier when it's like 2-on-1, especially when it's like 2-on-2. So like you
Hmm.
guys need to figure it out amongst the two of you and then figure it out with her. Don't figure it out with her and then figure it out amongst the two of you. And I think that I think we've done like a pretty decent job of that so far. And you know, my husband's a really good communicator, but like it's actually like shocking at like how much stronger it's made our relationship. Like having her, where I normally hear, and not to say
Hmm.
it's not stressful, but I think
Yeah.
like just that like constant focus on the two of us has been really important.
Yeah. That is so beautiful and such a good piece of advice, too. What about care? So, did you have any support right when she got there? Was it parents? Was it doulas? Was it night nurse? What happened then? And then, kind of, what has been your journey from like a care standpoint?
Yeah, so we were really lucky in so many ways. My parents came up from Southern California and they were here for 6 weeks when she was
Mm-hmm.
born, which was great. Just having my mom close by. One of my good friends, he was in Europe for the summer, and so he let my parents stay in his apartment.
Oh, nice.
So it was great because they were here, but we still had our own space. So that was really grateful. We were really grateful for that. We had a night nanny lined up, and
Mm-hmm.
the first day, actually, I woke up and she was like in the crib in like a loose blanket. And I was
Oh,
like, I just, yeah, like
no.
freaked out.
Yeah.
Which just kind of goes to show like just there's not a lot of regulation in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
any sort of care, which is crazy. So we ended up getting really lucky, and I went to like a mom's group and we found a different night nanny. And so we ended up, when she was like 3 weeks old, starting with somebody who was
Mm-hmm.
fantastic, and we had her for 4 weeks, 4 days a week, which made like a huge difference in just like our mental well-being.
Of course.
So that was really great. But we were
Mm-hmm.
lucky that we were even able to find her, quite frankly, because like those people book up so quickly, and also they're so expensive. Like we were able to find somebody who
Right.
was relatively affordable, but it's just insanely out of, like I would say 90% of people's price ranges. Like it's
Yeah.
just, and there's no help, there's no subsidy, there's nothing for it
Right.
at all. Like,
Right.
which is crazy. So that was really tough. And then I was off for 20 weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
so then after that, we were doing a part-time nanny share with a friend of ours who was really
Mm-hmm.
kind and like let us, because my husband was looking for a job, and so he had her 2 days a week, or he had her 3 days a week, and then we were doing the part-time nanny share 2 days a week. And then once he got a full-time job, we went to actually a nanny share with our neighbor, which we got really lucky. But
Oh,
finding our
nice.
nanny
Yeah.
was very hard. We interviewed 20 people. My neighbor had a crazy spreadsheet of all, like, it's just so hard and it's so expensive.
I
And
know.
you have to just do it off like one or two interviews with somebody, and then you're just handing over the most precious thing in the world. And like, again, we got very lucky with the nanny that we got.
Mm-hmm.
She is Mary Poppins. I wish we could keep her until Mackenzie was in college. But it was so hard, and you just don't have a lot of time to dedicate to it because you're ramping back up at work.
Right.
And you feel so much guilt, like you want to be with her, but you also want to be at your job, and it's wild.
How was coming back to work? Did you have to start full time after your 20 weeks off? Or
Yeah,
did you start part time?
so Google has a program where you have a ramp back time. So for two
Yep.
weeks you're half time, and then you ramp back up. And I think it was like, looking back, I think it was like the hardest year of my career of ramping back up after mat leave. I would say that that's reentry into the workforce is, and I, by the way, was at Google, which is a wonderful
Mm-hmm.
company when it comes to that, incredibly
Mm-hmm.
understanding. There's massive scaffolding in place to
Mm-hmm.
help, with reentry, and it was still really painful. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, like, to me, that was actually the hardest adjustment with motherhood, was going back into the workplace and then becoming a working mother, which I never didn't want to be, but like it was excruciatingly hard.
Oh my gosh. So, how did you navigate that time? Were you able to take additional time? What did you do? How did you get through? How did you get through it?
Honestly, finding our nanny was a
Yeah.
big relief. Finding a nanny that I could trust, because then it felt like I
Okay.
had an
Right.
extension of me, or an extension of my
Yep.
mom with Mackenzie, which helped a lot. And I'm very fortunate that Jake, in his role, doesn't really have to travel like I do.
Mm-hmm.
So he, when I was traveling, he's home. And we're
Mm.
also very fortunate that like his mom, my mother-in-law, was more than willing to hop on a plane. So I had to go to Japan twice within the first 2 months of being there, 3 months of being back at
Oh
work.
my
And like his
gosh.
mom hopped on a plane both times and was here and like helpful, and our nanny was here and stayed late. And so it was just like we are again super fortunate to have that sort
Hmm.
of like family unit and like that sort
Hmm.
of care. But for people who don't, I just don't know how they do it.
Yeah. I mean, it is the hardest thing. And I think it's kind of like a patchwork, whatever you can like kind of make work and who you can trust to make happen. But for you personally, leaving your baby, how did you manage that?
It was really tough. I mean, I think I was on a plane to New York within my first 3 weeks back at work.
Woof.
It was really tough. I would say I tried to, in the first few months while she was still like not, you know, she wasn't
Hmm.
even crawling when I went back. I mean, she wasn't even really sitting up on her own yet. Where I could, because Jake's job was flexible, take them with me. So his mom's in New York. So I would try to take them out to New York, or my
Nice.
family's in Southern California. So if I went down to LA, we tried to do that. But you can't do that all the time. And
Right.
it's really hard because you miss them and you want to be there and all the pressure you're putting on your partner. And then on the flip
Yeah.
side, you're like, oh, I guess it's also not the worst thing in the world that like I get to like work till 7 and then go out and get
Yes.
martinis and then get to like, there
Right.
is a little bit of even the guilt of like giving a break from parenthood a little bit,
Yes.
you're like, oh, I should be enjoying this. Like I should actually be at home helping.
I know. Gosh, travel is like so tough. Um, okay. And then for you and kind of getting back into work and then now where you are, what's like are you in like a rhythm or do you guys have like changes in front of you that you are anticipating or are you feeling good with where you're at with like your team?
We're in a good rhythm because we have a great nanny share. We have a great nanny.
Mm-hmm.
She is starting school in
Mm-hmm.
September, so that's going to be a new adjustment. And I'm starting a new job this week. And I didn't even think about like as we, normally when you start a new job, you're thinking about all the logistics of starting a new job.
Yeah.
And like yesterday, we were just talking about, okay, like what does this mean for like until I get like my schedule in a good place of who's doing pickup
Mm-hmm.
and who's doing drop off and
Right.
when she's going to school, how that's going to look because my commute goes in the opposite
Mm-hmm.
direction of her school and like all of these logistics. So I think it's just, it feels like every time you get into a rhythm, it's like something else changes and you just kind of have to
Yeah.
figure it out. But yeah, it's kind of weird how like that like scaffolding in society just doesn't necessarily exist for parents. Like everything is just like a little bit harder for us.
I know. I know. It's definitely a shocking piece. And I think too, I mean, you talk about like career and what you want, and then you're like, but what can I actually do? And that kind of like tension between the two. Have you had to like reevaluate that, or have you had to make adjustments that were uncomfortable for either end? Is there, what has that moment been like for you?
I think I'm grateful and that I hear a lot of like powerful women now and working women.
Yes.
Like it used
Yes.
to sort of be like, here's how I juggle it all and kind of like making it
Yes.
look flawless. It's like, well, you maybe have an
Yes.
army of nannies or whatever.
Yes.
I hear a lot of like, you can't have it all. Just don't expect to have it all. Like, expect that there's going to be certain things at work that you have to do and you're going to miss certain things with the kid. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be certain things that you miss with your daughter, your son, your kids or there's going to be certain things you miss at work to do something with them and that's okay and that's actually balance. And so I think kind of accepting that of like, all right, cool, I'm not going to be able to do everything. I'm not going to be able to work out every day, or I'm not going to be able to see, go out to dinners as often, or like I'm going to end up not being able to like save as much money or like spend money on the things I want to spend money on because it's worth it for me to just have somebody come over for 2 hours while I'm like catching up on work on the weekend. Like just like being okay with trade-offs, I think has like put me at peace more than before where I was just trying to make everything work. And like that's just
Right.
not, it's impossible. It's impossible unless you have like an army of nannies helping you and the most
Yes.
flexible schedule in the world.
Yeah. And even if that's true, even if that's true, you're still going to feel guilty or something about somewhat losing a something somewhere.
Totally, totally. Like every time I travel with her, I'm taking her away even from,
Right.
her little friend in the
Right.
nanny share and her
Sure.
routine and her story
Yes.
time and like all the things
Mm-hmm.
that like she loves, So
Mm-hmm.
it's like absolutely. There is no it's not that there's like a winning, it's just there's like there's no perfect. You just figure it out for what like
Mm-hmm.
which trade-offs you're okay with making and everything else will be fine. I was telling my
Yeah.
dad this actually. I was like I was like really nervous. I'm like, well, I feel like I'm not going to be as available for her.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm not worried about Mackenzie's future with you, Crystal. The fact that you're even thinking about it shows it's going to be fine. It's going to be different from the child you had, but that's fine. Like that's
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think that that is the ultimate is it is okay. However it looks and works and is right for you is what is okay. I love it. What about parenthood has changed you as a person?
I think one thing I do have to say to working moms is I think
Yeah.
being a mom has actually made me a much better like employee, manager, like peer, all those things because it just contextualizes actual stress and actual
Mm.
stakes. And like when, there's something small at work that you're obsessing over like a deck and you're like, this I used to just obsess over it and think about it all the time. And now it's like, you know what? This is great. We're good enough. We don't need to keep revving on this. Let's get this ship. Let's get this out the door. Or like this is not as like life threatening as we're acting like it is because you just have real stakes at home. And so I feel like it's actually taken my stress level down and my anxiety level at work down. I've just got the steadiest hand because everything feels like it's low stakes. And not saying that you should lean back from work at all. That's not it. But it just kind of helps contextualize. And so when you can be that like steady hand in the room, I actually think it gives you the upper hand on a lot of things.
Ah, Crystal. That is like pure gold. And like, I feel like I needed to hear that from you, from somebody. So, yeah, you're exactly right. And full disclosure, Crystal and I have been high stakes without kids in work environments before.
We have. And looking
Yeah.
back, you're like, that was ridiculous. Like, why were
Oh
we
my
stressed over that?
God. I know. And sometimes I wish that was my biggest stress too.
Yeah, yeah. I would give anything to have a customized lipstick color be the thing that I'm the most stressed about in the world.
Oh my God. Those were the days, man. Okay. So I do have a few like rapid fire, like one off questions, but you know, thank you for sharing. I think there's such power in people that can share a story for you being able to share, but then even more so for somebody out there that can take something from the story. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. And then also, uh, anything else you would big tip or subject or topic or something that's like floating out there in the ether that you're like, I need to talk about that.
Um, the best the best two pieces of advice I got were from the same woman, this woman named Jess, who I love. The first
Love.
was if you're expecting a baby and you have any onesies with snaps, never put them on at night because the last thing you want to deal with in the middle of the night are snaps. And like she gave me that advice and I was like, whatever. And then after the first night I had snaps, I was like, I'm burning any onesie that has snaps and it's going to be zippers and magnets forever. And that just changed my life that night.
I love it.
The second piece of advice she gave me was don't see when you have help and when you have care and your child is napping, do not expect anything from the person that is giving their care. That is their time to rest. Your child is exhausting. You've hired somebody to watch your child because they are exhausting. And having an expectation that then they're doing additional work on top of that is going to burn them out. And what you're going to end up seeing is somebody who's disengaged on their phone or exhausted or frustrated or at their wits' end. If that's like your expectation. So your expectation should be while your child naps, like they get to do whatever they want, like eat lunch, be on their phone, nap themselves, like whatever it is. And I thought that that was really good advice because I think, I think there's like this, and I've heard this from a lot of moms of like, oh, well, he's napping for 2 hours. Like she could be doing the dishes or she could be doing this. And it's like, I think about the time that went on the weekends when Mackenzie's napping and how like the first hour, I'm just kind of like decompressing myself, like making sure that the people that are around you have that same opportunity, I think is really important.
Oh, I love that. Two really good pieces of advice. Yeah, I love that. Random side note. Do you feed your caregivers when they come in? Do you provide lunch for them or dinner?
I don't, but she,
Okay.
so she provides her own, but she grocery shops we're so lucky. She grocery shops for the babies and just sends us a
Yeah.
picture of the
So
receipt,
nice.
and then we reimburse her for that. But if
Okay.
she
Love it.
included like her own groceries for her own lunch and that, we would also be fine with that. But she just kind
Mhm.
of batch makes everything for them.
Yeah, good. I always wonder. I like tip to be like, okay, $20 lunch at least then on top of, but like
Mhm.
I've never heard anybody else do anything different.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think it's different. And that's another thing that I've seen is that like the nannies situation is wildly different depending on where you live. Like even in the Bay Area, the
Yeah.
microcosms of like San Francisco versus Oakland versus
Sure.
like Marin is wildly different. So it is kind of that's one thing where I would say as you're looking for recommendations and as you're looking for advice, look for people in your like immediate like almost area code and zip code versus kind of
Right.
mass from different friends because it's so wildly different everywhere.
Great advice. I love it. Okay, if you could sum up parenting and entering into this world with one word, what would it be?
Magical.
Oh, I love
Magical.
it.
Magical. Best thing in the world. It was
So
magic.
amazing. Okay, great. And then what's like your hot tip? What's like really working for you? Where you're like, this is like a slam dunk.
We were really strict on sleep,
Hmm.
and she is a great sleeper to this day. And I think and like I've talked to like lots of my friends on that, and that was just a huge unlock for us as parents, as people, for her. If there's one thing you're going to get hyper focused on, I think like setting up really good sleep hygiene up front like is a gift you'll one of my friends said it's a gift you'll give them for the rest of their lives because they need sleep to recharge and grow and things like that. So that was my 2 cents of like if there's going to be one thing that you focus on and stick to, it's stick to a sleep program.
I love it. Amazing. Great. That's beautiful.
This was so fun.
Oh, dear,
You're
this was the
so amazing.
best.
Oh my gosh, so like this podcast is just such a brilliant
Yeah.
idea. I feel like we need a lot
Thanks,
more of
girl.
this of just like
I do
regular
too.
moms like giving regular advice versus again like these people out in the ether. How did this idea come to you?
Just my personal journey. I mean, literally, because we had Felix, same idea. In the middle of COVID, like, oh my gosh, we should move to from LA. We can. We don't have to like stay glued here. And then it was the perfect time to start a family. We wanted to buy a home. Everyone from LA was moving to Austin, so I was like, let's go try it. We did. We bought a home. We loved it. And then baby came, and then our next baby came. Literally, I had 4 months off, and then I had a month of half-time work. By the time I was full-time back at work, I was pregnant again.
Oh,
So I knew from just that short time, and then as I started traveling and all the things that you do, there was no way I was going to be able to do it with like two babies. So it was tough to come to that. I mean, I will tell you, I had like the worst like internal conflict with everything because I was like, wait a second, like I wanted my life to look this way and now it's like this and so stressful. And I had a lot of judgment that I did not realize that I was going to have. So that kind of like threw me for a loop. It was just wild and it really hard to find an anchor. I reached out to girls that have teenagers now, and the text that I sent was, "Hey, having a hard mom day, like any random advice." They did not respond. They just didn't respond. And granted, everybody's busy, so no ill will. But I was like, I am really in the trenches here. I am really
yeah.
struggling. I cannot find like a true source of anything. Nothing on social was like resonating with me at all. Barely any books. I was like hating advice. I didn't want an expert. I didn't want a doctor. I like wanted a friend, but like we were new in the community, so it was hard to find some. And then it was just like, ugh. So literally the idea is just like real people doing real stuff, dealing with real things that are going on and that are saying the truth about what's hard, what's easy, what's not, what you'll, I don't know, what you'll encounter, what you may not. And I think that's just gold. I mean, I think the hearing somebody else's story is powerful.
Yeah, it's like your mom bestie that you can
It
talk to.
totally,
Yeah, no,
totally.
I love that. It's totally true. And online, there's horrible advice. I think a lot of just
Yes.
people that prey on moms.
Yes.
And I think I just absolutely hate that. And I was really lucky where I'm like you, where I was most of my friends are on the later end of having kids. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
many friends with kids that are older than 5.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky that I knew a bunch of women who had just been in it that like would
Yeah.
respond to text messages like that. And if you don't have that, and if you're brand new to a community, that's the other thing of like, I
Totally.
spent basically my entire adult life in San Francisco. And so I have
Right.
community here, and even my friends without kids that are here, it's still easy. And like, I just went out, my gay bestie had his 41st birthday in the Castro, and like, I'm able to
Oh,
just go to that on a Saturday. So a lot of my
totally.
life didn't have to change. But if you're somewhere where you don't know a lot of people,
Hmm.
it's isolate. It is so isolating.
It's already this very lonely internal journey. And then, no matter what, whether you have the best support in the world, it's still you that's going through it. And then, if you don't have community, it's so hard to find some. And how difficult it is to find some when you're in that vulnerable state.
Totally. And it's kind of interesting because I actually had a hard time accepting help at first. Like I took a lot of advice
Hmm.
beforehand, but one of our neighbors dropped off some groceries for us. And I was like, it was just great. It was all this food that was just like ready to eat and healthy and yummy. And I was like, at the time, I was just like subsiding on like protein shakes. And I was like, Maddie, like I was like in tears. These pre-made salads are so amazing. I was like, like, I should be able to do all this because like I didn't carry. So like it shouldn't be hard on. And
Hmm.
she was like, carrying has nothing to do with like, she's like, sure, yes, of course there's a
Totally.
recovery and that's hard. But like you're caring for a newborn, like that's hard regardless. Like don't have
Totally.
this expectation that you should be like cooking dinner every night and making fresh lunches and like still working out and all of this just because you didn't actually carry the pregnancy. Like you're taking care of a newborn that's crying because they're hungry every 2 hours. Like that's enough to take out anybody. And like hearing that was like, okay, yeah, actually this is hard. This is hard. Like it's hard.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. That's the other thing that I was going through too, is it's like, why can't I do this the way I want to do this or how I envisioned I was going to do this? I mean, it was so crazy. And then if you're already thinking in that world, then you have all the outside crappy crap that's coming at you. And then, of course, everybody's well meaning. There's no ill intent here, obviously, but you still have to sift through your own stuff.
Yeah.
It's wild. I think finding that community, building that community, just having some real people doing real stuff.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. You're the perfect person to do it because like the second anybody meets you, they want to be your best friend for like good
Ah,
reason. You're just
thanks,
like an
Crystal.
amazing human.
So
Like who wouldn't
sweet.
want to be like close to you and around you?
Oh, I love it. Thanks, girl. I'm so happy that I get to use this as an excuse to be like, let's chat.
I love it. I love it. Me too.
Thanks for listening to It's a Circus. If today's episode made you feel a little less alone, share it with a friend who might need it too. We are building something amazing at the Turner Brothers Circus, an entire space designed for parents to find connection, laughter, and support. I'd love for you to be a part of it. Remember, you're doing better than you think. Stay grounded, stay real, and embrace that beautiful mess. And as always, the show must go on. Until next time.